Okay, well, thank you for coming tonight in this presentation. My name is Alexandre, and here is Lynn. And as Yanis mentioned, we're both artists, and we have a project called IZOD, which is a new diffusion space in Montreal, aiming to present artworks in a specific manner. So in order to present that, it's something that comes from our own practice as artists. So we're going to make a quick overview of what the kind of works we do, which will lead at the motivation for us to create this diffusion space as artists and not as producers or curators as such. So I'm going to do most of the talking for the formal presentation, and then we'll do question and answers with freestyle.
He's having a better English than me, that's why.
Yeah, we're from Montreal, so it's a we're French Canadians, so, but we're used to speaking English because it's a pretty bilingual environment. But yes. So I'm going to sit down to be more in the frames of Yanis and start with this little presentation. So here is my plan. I don't have a formal PowerPoint. I'm not a slides fan. So I have here the little plan and with a title called Rethinking the Presentation of Generative Artworks. So as I mentioned, a little preamble where we talk about us. I'll start with Lynn, actually. Let's do it more. So Lynn is an artist working with the body and technology. So different types of projects where there's an interaction with somatic or dance processes and technological processes. One of the projects that is connected to the art space that we're going to present just after is called L'Espace des Autres, and is a project that was made in liminal space. It was made in a storage space where people were visiting this storage space in which performance was being done as well as played back from previous takes. It's a very succinct description, but the idea was to make a temporary installation space in a storage area. So maybe I'm going to just let the video play, maybe with no sound because it's in French, and it will be not necessarily the best thing to hear.
Yeah, it's a 2005 project, so the video is a bit old-fashioned.
Yes, it's an old project, so we chose it not because it's recent, but because it's connected to what we're going to talk about with this new space that we're presenting. So in this case, it's a project where Lynn made little scores, choreographic scores, and that's me, I guess, and had people perform those scores in a space where 4 cameras were scanning the space. And then these 4 cameras were put together in a kind of a database which reassembled trajectories from algorithmic processes. So basically it was using the material gathered by the different performers in the space to create new choreographies. And then the visitors would go in that space and interact with small screens and recreate themselves another layer of choreography. I'm just going to scan forward. So these are like the 4 views we had. So it's a surveillance type thing, and the people were doing the different things in the space. And then during performances, I think this is one. No, this is again someone filming. So this is one of the softwares we had in the little underground thing, tracking people, ending up with the performances which were we were inviting people to sit in that space. And there were 8 screens reproducing that material, and Lynn was doing performances. So we see here the crossfades between the different participants, which was made with algorithmic processes on PowerBook G4. So we're talking about 2006. It's a really older project. So this is the kind of work that's been interesting Lynn since ever. And maybe quickly, no, that's enough for her, I think. Huh? That's enough for you?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, that's enough for you. For my side, I'm more into installations. My training is in electroacoustic music, so electroacoustic composition. And I quickly went to new media stuff, digital arts, and became half artist and half collaborator for other artists who want to integrate technological ideas in their work. So for instance, Lynn, we have a collaboration on that level, but I'm doing that with a lot of artists in Montreal and elsewhere. I can show quickly this, but it's not so interesting. This is my artistic thing. And I'm gonna also talk about a project that's old, which is called 6281, which was done in 2004. So it's a project where I created, I'm doing software and electronics, so I'm kind of mingling with both. And I created an amplifier that was able to amplify sound into a light bulb. So basically use the light bulb as a loudspeaker. So it's a cross between a conventional amplifier and a lighting dimmer with a triac. So it's a bit of a Frankenstein device that I put together. And then with the creation group, we made sounds and vocal poems that were played in a space. So I'm just gonna play it a little bit. So let's see why it's, okay, it's the internet maybe. I have downloaded it, so I'll play it from the download. Just skip forward just a bit to a different moment. So the level of sound that we're hearing in this space is about what you would hear in the exhibit. So each of these light bulbs are not super loud, and they were placed around the apartment in different rooms. So by walking around, you recreate your own mix, and you sort of create an experience that's different every time because the loops of each light bulb is different. And depending on where you walk and at what moment you come in, you get a different experience. So that's voice in the light bulbs.
Yeah.
We don't see much there.
We don't see much.
So the reason I'm talking about that work is as mentioned for the other one, it's not a recent work, it's a 2004 work. It's because one of the particularities that was part of the presentation of that work was that we sent by mail 200 keys. So the idea was to invite people by mailing them a physical key to the space and enabling them to come whenever they wanted to visit the exhibit. So the exhibit was running forever in a loop in that empty apartment, and people got that by the email, not email, sorry, physical mail, and then add this little URL here to figure out what it was, and then they had instructions, and they could then take their bike or subway and visit that space, which was in a residential neighborhood. It was not a downtown area in Montreal. So this was an interesting thing in different reasons. First was the kind of context we could create by having those lamps in different rooms. It's more it's a bit of a scenographic approach instead of a gallery approach where the gallery neutralizes the space, whereas that would really make use of the space and put a light bulb in the bathroom and put one in the kitchen, creates another level of language. And the other point which was interesting for us was to create this sense of exploration from the visitor. So a bit like in the project of Lynn, where the visitors were invited to go in that storage space. In this case, they were walking with the key and then finding the door, trying the key, and having no idea what they were going to experience in that space, but coming with their own stories, that things that might happen. And this is something we find interesting, to create this friction between the typical artwork viewing experience compared to that kind of thing where you have a notion of self-autonomy. The person visiting is clearly in control on what they're doing. And this process also of getting to understand a work in a private context. In that case, it was random, because you could be by chance having somebody else already there or not. You could go at 3 in the morning, you have less chances than at 5 in the afternoon. So there were a bit of people meeting in that space, but often people were alone. The exhibit lasted for about 2 months, and I think we had close to 1,000 people signing the book. So we don't know how many people came, but
people was giving the key to someone else.
Yeah, the instruction was to, once you were done, give the key to a friend, and then the keys were moving around the city like that. So these two projects we chose to just give an idea of the kind of things we do. So this aspect of electronics and this aspect of working with the spaces. And doing many projects over the years, I'm going to talk more about me for this aspect, but I'm in more the digital arts network, which is a very festival-oriented network. Often digital art is presented in events. Even if it's in installations, you'll have a festival or a biennale or kind of a temporary events, and then you walk around with your installations through these venues. And one of the constatations I make as an artist is that there are many constraints to that format that change the kind of works you develop. At some point, I was thinking about the future problematics of production even before thinking about creation. And this for me was a red flag, in the sense that if as an artist I was concerned about how am I going to get my work on the plane before the work being done, it's a problem, but it's a problem that was pushed by the context that those artworks are generally presented. So we ended up having this idea of creating a space that would reflect, remove these constraints. So in the context of a festival, the largest one is often contamination, especially if you make an artwork that's meant to be consumed or read in a more contemplative manner. It's very difficult to get a good context for that in a festival. Festivals are often, you try to line up things, you try to see as many as possible. And then if you say, okay, but I need a space by myself for 3 weeks, it's hard to fit. So our project, which is called EZOD, which I'm going to come up here, like that, responds to these concerns as artists. So basically what we did is that we took a space above. We have a creation studio, and we took a space above, and we made it into a venue that you can visit at your own time. So basically it's the same concept of the light bulb piece, but more modern, because you go through a website and things like that. But you end up being able to visit the space at your own pace, alone or with a friend, but without the risk of contamination from other works or from other people. That's another thing also for me, even as an artist visiting other works. You often have a competition with other visitors, and I'm sensitive to that. So having the possibility of presenting the work in a private, reserved moment is something that I find very interesting. So yeah, EZOD, actually, it's a Greek-ish word. It was a word used by my Faraday, so electromagnetism pioneer. And it's the word that was used prior to using the word anode. So basically, eventually, they they figured the terminology with the anode as the input point for energy, but for a while it was azode that was used as the input point for energy in electrical circuit. So we chose that name because it resonated with our preoccupations with technology, and it was a word that wasn't used in other contexts. So I'm not gonna read this. It's basically what I said over the blurb just before, but it's the idea of creating a moment that you go and you visit the artwork at your own pace. So for instance, just to give if we go for the exhibit that's currently playing, which is video installations by Sabrina Raté.
Interactive one.
Yeah, there's interactivity in that project. So basically, you can, let's say you say, okay, I want to go visit that. You book a moment in the self-led experience slot, and then you say, okay, I want to go Thursday at 7 p.m., and I enter my stuff, and I reserve that slot, and I get the instruction to go visit that exhibit at that time. So it's a calendar-based system that allows people to register. Yeah, we charge $5. It's a symbolic fee because we found that when it's free, people don't come. They reserve, but they don't come. If they pay $5, suddenly everybody comes. So it's a very small amount. It makes it more formal, maybe. But
and also it was a way for us to have a little trace of
yes.
the people because they are alone in the space. We get the space without any surveillance, any check. So if something arrives, we can follow who was there and something like that. Yeah.
Which payment system did you use?
We're using a system by Squarespace, which interfaces with Stripe. Is that it? Stripe, yeah. So it's all automatic. We don't. And then the system. This is where the system talks to our web server, and I made things so that it unlocks the door if you press on the link in your email within your time zone. So it's a bit of an Arduino style. I don't know if you're familiar with these electronics creative coding toolkits, but basically the email unlocks the door if it's at the right time. But it's all connected. Well, there's more and more of these systems where you can hook websites together. And this is I just grab the webhook and I open the door at the right time. So.
And sometimes the door opening and it's starting the installation too. Sometimes it depends about the artist. It could be linked with the work.
So there's a word there that I want to talk about a little bit. I say place for generative art. So actually place is also a word I want to talk about. So we discussed this. We didn't want to call it a gallery because there's a connotation more linked to visual arts and more also linked to the market of arts with the gallery name. So we use the label place, which is a bit different from space because we don't want to contextualize the space as such. So place has a low-key sense to the term. It's a place for generative art. It's like just a place. It's not like a space. It's a small thing, but for me, it makes a big difference. And generative art is used in a very wide aspect. I'm going to show a project that I consider generative art, which is not necessarily what we think about, but we use it as a term made basically to isolate the component of something happening while you're there. So the idea is that you're not consuming a completely rendered work, you're consuming a work that will have a certain level of action and of process while you're in the installation space. So the example I want to give, which is a bit of an extreme, is a piece by an artist called Anne F. Jacques, Gabriel Drolet, Remonter le chauffage. And she works with recuperated electronics, even electrics, I could say. So she works with thermostats, blowers, light bulbs, and she creates feedback loops between light bulbs that heat a thermostat, that starts a blower, that pushes air on the light bulb, and these things all make sounds. So it's really like self-agency of electric components deployed in the space. So I'm going to...
Yeah, and it was in the winter time because we need a kind of temperature in the space that could not be at 30 degrees in the summer.
Yeah, it worked well because the cold outside made it sure that if everything was off, the temperature would go down, and those feedback loops could.
And it's all
Interact.
thermostat. I don't know, probably you don't have that here because it's really for putting heat in-house. So you don't have this, but in Quebec we need to put heat
Yeah.
in-house.
We need thermostat. So I'm going to play it just to hear the ambiance of that work.
À la fin, on va voir ça va être-
Okay.
We don't see that much.
The projector is a bit dim, but all the sounds we heard are made acoustically. So it's these things that start, stop, blow sound in tubes, and she tunes these by changing the length and stuff like that. So it's very low tech. It's all. I think she bought nothing to do that work.
It's all coming from a recuperation
Yeah.
center where she works. So there's nothing she buy into that. All the electronics, it's recuperation. So it's really interesting to see.
So that kind of work is interesting for us to present in that context where you come up, you reach the space, and then you enter that universe. It's a very different mindset from going in a museum, for instance, where you would have that piece, and it's very strange the difference it makes to be in a more normal context, and that's also a concept we like to develop. The space is situated in a residential area, so it's not like downtown with the galleries and the pubs and stuff like that. It's really, you have to go, you're not far from a subway station, so it's not much of a hassle, but it's still a subway station that's not in the center of Montreal. So these ideas for us were to make it like normal to have this in a space, in a residential area for 2 months, and you could go visit it as you want. So that's a bit the concept that ISOD supports. We've been doing that for 4 years now. So if I come back here, we can see that we had 3 works in 2022, 3 in 2023, and 4 last year, and we have 3 going on this year. All very different, but always sharing this notion that something is going on while you're in the space. So let me just look at the plan. Okay, a curatorial principle. So I was mentioning this is a bit of a reaction to our art practice as artists. And one thing I was talking about this festival ecosystem in which I'm part of, which also suffers from over-teaming. There's a lot of curatorial teams going on, and a lot of meta discussion by curators over works. And as artists, sometimes it's interesting, but sometimes it's a bit tricky to fit in the theme. And this notion of discussing the theme and presenting works together and having a discourse above the works, for us it's not necessary. So the idea for us was to remove as much as possible all those notions of themes and curatorial ingeniosity. We're not interested by that. We're interested by the artworks, and we want to let them to be left as autonomous as possible. So we have for that a number of principles, we call, which are basically how we decide which works we present. So we can have, you have to fit in these these big teams. Otherwise, you cannot present in this space. So it becomes like objective criteria. We receive projects, we check the criteria, and we say, sorry, your work is not contextual enough, or sorry, your work does not involve space-time enough. And then we don't have to make an aesthetic decision. We make them purely on those objective principles. So that's our principles that we use to determine if works are correctly for the space. So I think that's mostly it. It's true, I skipped a bit of a part. I'm going to come back because this is called ESA, that's the name of the space. And as Yanis mentioned, we are part of an organization called Artificiel. Let me find the website from Artificiel. So Artificiel is involved in helping people developing artworks using technology. I see some open source people, I think, here. So we're not, it's not a criteria to use open source, but we are strongly advocating for it for two reasons. One is the normal open source reasons, and the other one is for the perennity of the work. So one interesting aspect of open source is having the source to an artwork means that you can recreate it. It's a bit like having the score to a symphony. You can grab the score and replay the symphony. You don't have to have the symphony, the original one. You can recreate it from the score. And source code in the context of artwork can serve the similar thing. Schematics in the context of electronics. So if you provide your schematics and source code, people can re-implement your ideas even if the systems don't exist anymore. Because that's a problem we have in electronic arts. You have artworks made in 2000 that don't run anymore because the systems have drifted way too far from what was available at that moment. And for instance, I have works that were making use of very specific instructions on PowerPC chips, and these PowerPC chips don't exist anymore. But if I have the specification of my idea as source code, I can re-implement that on whatever system is available today. So that's the artistic aspect for source code. I find it interesting. It's a bit, some people don't like that because it's like giving away your recipes, but I don't think as artists we should be concerned about protecting our stuff. So we work with we make ourselves 1 or 2 projects per year, and we work with 5 or 6 other artists to develop. A lot of the development we do is done in open frameworks. So open frameworks, if you don't know what it is, it's a community-developed cross-platform toolkit for creating coding in C++. I'm one of the core developers of that thing since a few years now. And basically, it's a toolkit which allows you to quickly assemble projects in C++ with components that are designed to interact together. Most of the components are basically wrappers for libraries, like OpenCV or stuff like that, but they have a layer of interface that makes it more easy to put in the workflow of an interactive artwork typical program. There's not 1,000 ways of making that, and Open Frameworks provides one that works well, so it's interesting to develop that further. And it's been around almost 20 years now. There's another topic which it's very different from this talk, but it's a problem we have right now is the perennity of the momentum of an open source project. Right now there's a bit of a crisis because we're stuck between supporting the old way, and of course if you talk about a 20-year-old C++ project, you have a lot of cadavers it's really a complex problem because 20 years ago, the landscape was very different, specifically about dependency management and packages. It didn't really exist. So a lot of work in open frameworks went into providing packages, but now there's lots of ways of doing that, which makes the open frameworks way a bit complicated. So there's a bit of a crisis right now in figuring out a way of making it work properly for most people. Hello. So, I'm just adding that as a little bonus for the open source people here, because
Yeah.
yeah, there's a few. So Arduino is also open source. So we make use not necessarily of the Arduino boards themselves, but the environment. We use it a lot because it makes it easy to share the work with other artists also. So it's more about community and sharing than technology, even though technology is obviously fundamental to making art with it. So let me just click on what I had here. So this is where we presented stuff over the years, not so interesting. Maybe another thing we can just quickly, this organization, Artificiel, during 5 or 6 years, we did almost monthly an evening where we had guest performances and we served a meal for 40 to 60 people. So this is something we also did in this community mindset of providing a space for people to present either work in progresses or experiments and things like that. I'm just scrolling very randomly, but the idea of talking about that is that was prior to the space, the EZAD art space we're now pushing. And it also allows a very different type of project because those performances, an evening, it brings a kind of project which is not the kind of project that we can put in the installation space. So we wanted to move the focus from performative experimental gestures to things that are more installative and in duration. So that was the Vendredi Bouilli. So we did 40 of those over 6 years, so quite a lot of work. So I think, how long has it been?
It's 30 minutes now.
30 minutes, so I think that's what we said. I was talking 30 minutes, then we would do questions. Is that how you'd like it?
Thank you.
Thank you.